it's almost doing that introspection and saying, 4 years from today, what's going to be my seat? And then building the rest of the agency that you can occupy that eventual seat, right? So for us, Bref was naturally gifted at sales. He's still in that seat today. I took client success for those 17 clients until we basically went to I think we had 24. We hired our first account manager.
Hey, everybody. We are excited to have our next guest on our podcast here, Brad Ferris. So Brad Ferris is the co-founder of Agency Growth Team, and he is the co-owner of Clinic Growth, a very successful agency in kind of the medical space. So Brad is somebody that I've had the honor to have a bunch of conversations with in person, hang out with, get to know him. He's also going to be speaking at our next Mansion Mastermind in July in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So I'm thrilled to have you here, Brad. Welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, and also very happy lead staff customer.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I always, I love the support you always give us around that product, which is fantastic. But Brad, let's unpack things with you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about Clinic Grower. What does your agency do?
Yeah, so the agency now is a little different than what it was originally. So when my business partner, Bref, had originally kind of created the agency, obviously he wanted to help medical practices and wasn't quite sure exactly, which area of medicine. It's a big, broad kind of industry overall. But right now, kind of 2024 heading into 2025, the last 3 years, we've really focused in on cosmetic surgery and plastic surgery, right? So kind of our value system is we want people to look better, feel better, and be better. For many of those practices, it's built around reputation, right? It's built around word of mouth, the results that they get. We're working with medical professionals, so knock on wood, most of the time people are great to work with because they're professional as well. And basically, full stack agency. There's nothing that we don't really offer. We have concierge service. Our team is totally internal, so we control everything. We're kind of past that white label size, about 150K right now per month in terms of how we do gross revenue. But it's just really fun. I get to do a lot of coaching. I'm kind of moving into that chief optimizing officer. We've got a team of about 40 because the call center is pretty large. And I get to sit with my team each week and work on various new projects or do impact trainings. That's kind of what we call our education internally. Or I might be meeting with a client that wants just one-on-one time learning how to scale their practice.
It's amazing to kind of sit back and hear the way that you approach this and think about this. So from my perspective, it seems very obvious that impact is you call it impact coaching, right? You're spending a lot of time building your team. You've set up a separate piece to try to help out agencies, right? You have a separate piece to help out the actual owners of the practices scale their practice as well, right? So this is exactly the value system that I try to bring into the various projects that we're in. I think this is part of why we've connected so much. So thank you for being one of those people, because there's as we've seen, there's definitely a divide of hey, this is really about money for me, or this is really about impact. And the people that are in impact, what I've come to realize is, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is what Zig Ziglar said, right? If you help enough people, you can have anything you want. And when you stop focusing on the money and you start focusing on having your clients be incredibly successful, then it's money just starts to show up from places. And you have the ability, as we were kind of chatting earlier, to be hey, if you want to go and take care of yourself with a really nice haircut once a month and spend some time, or treat yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. Your impact and kind of the way you're living your life has afforded you these luxuries.
No, as we get super philosophical and stuff like this. Yes to all of it, right? I think I'm never going to blame somebody for their motivations. I might question whether they're balanced. I think that's the most important thing overall, right? Is if you want money, fame, and fortune, well, you probably want to balance it, or you can get a little bit ahead of yourself. I think on the opposite side, any of us that are running a business, we're out operating a charity, right? We're not operating a nonprofit in terms of oh, hey, we can just keep breaking even and we'll do fine, right? When I'm coaching other agencies, I say one of the things that we signed up for that we don't acknowledge often is that these businesses, we're either going to sell or they're going to die. Make your decisions wisely. right? And if you want to pull the money out because you need to, we've all done that. That's allowed. You want to keep the money in because you want to reinvest it. Again, we've all done that. That's allowed. But that period of time that not just is our business alive, but we're alive is very short, right? It's very insignificant when we think of how long everything's been around for. So the impact that you have or the impact that you want to leave, I think that that's what needs to be driving your motivations, right? For me, it's family. It probably is my legacy. It's probably being fortunate enough to give back to other people. That's an abundance mindset rather than an isolationist one. But there's lots of people that listen, if they had $1 billion, no kids, they're living on an island and that's good for them. I might just, ask for them to share a little bit more with other people that, kind of, could appreciate a little bit of a helping hand. But you do you, man. Like, you're here for somewhere between, 50 and 95 years. You choose, just be okay with whatever choices you make.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, are you somebody that on a regular basis kind of thinks about the fact that, hey, this is going to end soon? I think that some of us are scared of it, and some of us are like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm making the most of it. And I know personally I've tried to make that transition of being like conscious on a daily basis of my impending mortality. Like, what is your mindset on that?
If I sit and think about it, it's heavy and it's overwhelming, right? But there's a quote that I heard, and I am a I'm a Catholic. I'm someone that believes in God and stuff like that. But there's a quote a long time ago I heard about when you step to the edge of all that you're about to step out into the darkness. Faith, which is agnostic to any type of religion, is knowing that one of two things happen, right? You'll either step into that darkness and find something solid to stand on, or you'll somehow be taught or learn how to fly, right? I can't control any of that. As a nurse, that's where I properly trained. I did palliative care, so taking care of people at the very end of their lives. I also did fertility, which was taking care of people at the very beginning of conception and all of that sort of stuff. Maybe I'm just not the perfect person because my perspective is like I've had these great experiences in my life. I've kind of filled my cup, I think, like in terms of all the amazing things that I like. To be honest, helping helping 2,000 couples have a baby. I don't know that I'm going to get to something better than that. So I think the other thing too was early in my career, early around 27, 28, I'd already done like the best, coolest thing that I would ever do. So I think everything else after that, maybe that's where that abundance mindset comes from. It's nothing can compete with that. So it's not fair to try.
It's amazing like how some of these things we're in the moment and then they can shape our perspective for the rest of our existence. And I'm curious, like with your background as a nurse and going from like the fertility to the palliative care, how did you find your way into the agency space? So, and why? Why did you decide this is where you wanted to go?
So when I graduated with my graduate degree, I have a graduate degree in business. I actually thought, this is 2005, right? I thought of starting a marketing agency. I was going to call it straight line marketing. I had the business plan and all this stuff all built out. And, I went back to nursing school, kind of, started running some private practices, got into a leadership program at the hospital and just kind of forgot about it. And it was 2019, early 2019, High Level had just kind of come out, right? And I saw it for the first time with my business partner. He kind of had, a white labeled version that he called Growth Express. And, it's
So the business partner in like a
clinic grower.
clinic grower.
So I met him for the first time kind of on a mutual client, and I had seen High Level for the first time. And I mean, for anyone that was back in that day, I mean, we were using spreadsheets and Twilio and MailChimp, and it was a mess, right? So, he said he had an engineering team, and I was smart enough to know it was a white label thing and stuff. And I was like, well, look, show me that thing, right? And that actually started the whole idea of, because I was working in private equity at the time, and I was you kind of generally work in 3-year exit contracts. I was like, do I really want to do that agency now, right? Like, is that something that would be fun? And got to meet him. Then COVID happened, right? So we kind of formed the partnership early pre-COVID. And then we just kind of honestly, like, again, like your business is going to live or die. And COVID was existential for pretty much everybody at that time, right? So we poured everything for 2 years and we grew. And we grew by offering solutions to clients that really needed the things that we were coming up with. None of our practices had ever imagined having 40,000 in payroll with no income. So we moved them all to virtual. We helped them pre-sell like crazy. Things that they had never been faced with before. Like this had never happened before. There was no business case studies to reference or anything like that, right? Yeah, that's basically how we came to forming the agency. Was it had already been there. I think Bref had about 17 clients early on. Kind of minimal revenue, for probably under 25,000 at that time. And we took it to seven figures about 18 months later.
There's a lot to unpack here for me. A lot of stuff that is like simple to say that was maybe complicated. How did you decide that Bref was who you wanted to work with, and like that whole creating that partnership, which I've seen a lot of agencies struggle with? I'm wondering like how you guys formed that and how you knew this was going to be a good fit along the way.
So I'll be very transparent, like reflecting back, I had no idea at the time if it would be good or not, right? I think we, and again, I don't know that I would give this advice to everybody, but it's something to consider. We didn't actually formalize our partnership agreement for that first 12 months. We basically just came to a mutual agreement that like, hey, we're both going to come in. This is what we're going to invest. This is what we're going to put in terms of time. This is what we're going to take, and we'll kind of see how things go. That actually was super helpful because I think it allowed us to have a conversation about like, what would, and I know you do quarterly planning like we do too. Like what would the next year, the 5 year, like what would the exit plan look like? How would we divvy up equity, right? Would it be 50-50? Would it be an uneven, allocation based on geographies and stuff like that? And it really, I mean, as we were spending time together, you start to evaluate, just like it's a relationship, just like any other relationship we talked about earlier. You're evaluating somebody's value system, their work ethic, right? Partnerships are not easy. There's always conflict, but I think the thing is you don't swear at each other, just like a marriage. You come to it with, open conversations. It means there's a little bit less money because you're also sharing the money across two people instead of one. But the benefit is, especially if you get to really highly capable people, which I think we are, you can accomplish far more together than you can do on your own. I've often thought of that, right? Like if I had formed straight line marketing and done this myself, I would not have the second agency. I wouldn't even entertain a second agency without having a partner. The easiest way to explain how we work yin and yang together is Bref is speed and I'm accuracy, right? You kind of need to have both in order to be successful, okay? Because speed, obviously, it's fast to implement, break stuff as it goes, but you might not do everything properly, right? Accuracy is it's got to be precise, right? And sometimes you can do both. And we've been fortunate enough where, because both of us are moving in the same direction, he might advocate a little bit faster. I might advocate a little bit more correct. But at the end of the day, we've always gotten there.
Knowing that you guys run EOS and like the EOS model with the visionary and the integrator, from that description, it sounds as if Bref is the visionary and you're the integrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those people, how would you explain that to people that maybe are hearing those terms for the first time?
Yeah. So best book I can honestly recommend is an audiobook. It's called Get a Grip. I think it's wonderful because I think it takes you through kind of very similar situation to us. The visionary person is a big idea, fast moving mind, right? Passionate to their instincts. They've got good foundations in most of what they're deciding to do, but they're a big idea, big ambitious. Like most people would be like, whoa, like that's too big, that's too much, right? But like the Richard Bransons of the world, right? Like the people that their mind is always moving in a positive direction towards something that they can attain. That to me is a visionary, right? The integrator is the person. It's like they're the boring person. They're like, okay, that's a great idea. Let's take 80% of that and let's manage it over here with this budget, doing it in this way, doing these proper processes, and here are the people that we need to hire, right? I think every visionary is perfectly paired with someone who's good at integrating, because ultimately, if you're just a visionary, you're going to struggle in all the areas that you would expect to struggle. But the implementer isn't going to have the same vision, the same risk tolerance, right? The same willingness to like make that leap. they're going to be more reserved and conservative. So the chances that they take, like, I'm not a gambler. I have no interest in gambling money. That just seems stupid to me, right? But like other people would be like, let's put it all on red, right? I couldn't imagine making that decision. That's just not something that I'm programmed for. So if you're a solo owning an agency and you're the visionary, then you just want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with someone who's really, really good at the implementation. And you can still achieve greatness, right? It just would be difficult to do it as a, like, from a predictive index standpoint, we would call it mavericks, right? Like you can't just have like an entire agency full of maverick visionary people. Nothing would get accomplished in a straightforward way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Do you agree that this visionary mindset kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of entrepreneurs? So entrepreneurs tend to be more visionaries than the integrators or implementers.
Well, but I'm very visionary as well, right? Like a great example for me was when I came out, when I joined Clinic Grower with Breath. It was like for the very first time, I can't really explain what it felt like, right, in words. But I was that person that was always under my breath being like, you stupid idiot, to every boss I ever had. I was an entrepreneur at 19. I just didn't listen for the next 20 years. And then when that voice finally became stronger, I was okay, I have the experience, I have the education, I have the financial wherewithal to do this. I wish I had done that. And that's one of the things I look at in my boys is, I'll be happy if they're electricians, but if they have that entrepreneurial spirit, two of them do it. Like you could just see it, right? In terms of how I'm wanting to, if they want to go to school, wonderful. But I will nurture that because I think that that's such a great gift to have. Like there's not many people in the world that really lead because they love leading. They think that they lead because it's accomplishments or prestige and other things. But like if you really love leading, you're an entrepreneur, man.
Yeah.
There's no, like, if you're like, I gotta be first in line, you need to be owning your own business. Like you're not going to be happy. I was never happy anywhere that I was. I could truly say that. Like when people are like, do you love your job? Everybody gets a job, right? I love what I do right now.
It's kind of, if you're a lion, it's hard to dress up as a zebra, right? And I felt that when I was working as an employee. I've had very few jobs in my career. And during those jobs, I was just like you. I was like, why are we doing it this way? This doesn't make any sense. And then the other people, like, and teachers, like, why are you asking so many questions? I'm like, how come no one else has thought of these questions? Like, it was so confusing for me. And it just felt like I didn't belong here. And then being able to like go out and build something. And, I don't know if this stuck with you, but that time as an employee for me was really valuable because to see things from that perspective and then have your own employees that are asking questions and not ever wanting to have them be in a box like I felt like I was in, and like fostering the entrepreneur, right? Where they're entrepreneurs, but they don't have their own business and they treat your business like it's their business. Like it's amazing to have those people on your team where they're like looking at these opportunities. And I remember trying to do that for the company that I was working for and being shut down and thinking like, this is so stupid how we're doing this. So there's no pathway to improvement if I have no voice here. Yep. And that was really discouraging, So Brad, like, it seems like you guys, you I think maybe get classified into what would be more of like a divergent, where you have this ability to kind of like be a visionary and an implementer. And I think that's really rare. I think what I've noticed is most entrepreneurs are very visionary and they miss that other piece. And this is where I fall into too. And I know it's a mistake looking back that I've made is, I've got these ideas and I can come up with great ideas, but I get bored when it comes to like the executing every little tiny step along the way. And then you end up with like half-baked ideas. And I've seen this with a lot of, especially agency owners, where it's like they start the business and maybe they're great at sales. I think that visionary part, like that entrepreneur, like it tends to be someone that's great at sales. But then it's like, how do I manage my agency? And they're missing out on that kind of like integrator operations person. And I know from my past, if I had to go back, that would be one of the things I would have done early is I would have installed this operator in there. And it seems like, I don't know, I'd love to hear from you on this. Like Breath is this visionary, and he had gotten to somewhere around 25K a month. But then he brought you guys in, and the agency kind of exploded because maybe it was missing out on that person that can really like hold people accountable and execute. Do you think that's true looking back on things?
Yeah, I think you always reach a limitation, right? There's always something, and you either get stuck there or you power through, right? And I think in his situation, I mean, we hadn't niched down yet, right? We were just taking any client that came in the door, right? We were not, and I'm very transparent. We were not great at hiring the first couple of hires, right? Like one is still with us, so we're very fortunate that that person is still with us. But like, I think we've hired 146 people in 5 years, and we only have 40 people right now. So like, do the math, right? There's been like 100 people that at some point in time, for short periods of time, have been here and gone already, right? Um, I think just the benefit of a partnership that I've always seen, or you being the owner, having a really, really reliable, valuable asset at your disposal for implementation and stuff, is it's two sets of eyes, right? It's two sets of people watching, just like, if you're kind of like a shepherd, right? You don't have just one dog, you've got usually two or three, right? It's multiple sets of eyes and senses and things like that. Um, I think what we do as entrepreneurs is we sometimes don't trust as much. That's hard. It is hard as an entrepreneur, right? To trust. But you also have to trust that you got to build the things around you that are going to be sustainable. I always talk about it as a foundation, right? You've got to build a foundation beneath you that allows you to keep building. Otherwise, you're just going to fall over. And when I'm coaching, I coach in an agency program. A lot of the time, these are the conversations that we're having about timing, decisions. When should you bring that person in? And a lot of the time, even looking back on my own perspective, being open, we made key hiring decisions way too late. We thought we thought we'd be able to do it in like 4 weeks, but it took like 4 months, right? Just because you're starting that hiring process doesn't mean you're compelled or legally required to hire somebody. But at least start the process, because if there is a talent that's out there that you just can't miss, it's like that client that's going to come to you with 14 locations. That could happen once every 3 years. And if the timing is off, you're still selling 14 individual clients, onboarding 14 individual clients. The timing sometimes has to be there. And I think that that's one of the things I've recognized as an entrepreneur is I can't control the timing, but I can control the plan, like for when that opportunity is there, when it's right to take advantage of it.
I'd love to go deep into this with you because I know this is a specialty for you, is this talent acquisition, and not only the talent acquisition, but the after the acquisition, the onboarding and turning these people, setting them up for success. Looking back on those 100+ people that you've let go, and similar to me, I can identify like this person could have been successful potentially had I been a better boss and I had the right infrastructure in place to give them what they need and set them up for success. So let's just like broad strokes. Where do you think the kind of thresholds are for, hey, when a lot of agencies hit this spot, we should start thinking about this hire? And then like just kind of going through the key hires. Can you run us through that and tell us where you think those are, Brad?
Again, broadly, you're going to start your agency as yourself. Okay. And, if you think of the agency at some point at scale having 3 to 4 significant arms, right? Departments. One of them is going to be sales and marketing, right? One of them is going to be operations. Someone's got to talk to the client. And then you probably have like your finance, your billing, your bookkeeping. If you're going to be a good person, do your taxes and all that sort of stuff, right? It's almost doing that introspection and saying, 4 years from today, what's going to be my seat? And then building the rest of the agency that you can occupy that eventual seat, right? So for us, Bref was naturally gifted at sales. He's still on that seat today. I took client success for those 17 clients until we basically went to I think we had like 24. We hired our first account manager, right? Because then it made sense to have that person help with the onboarding, the communications, the cadence, and for me to go deep into operations and start building the fulfillment team, right? Our clients are smart enough to know when we are distracted. Everyone, I think there's this magic number that people are like, well, at 25 is too late, man. Like 25, can you imagine if half of them tried to email you because of an issue? There's no way you'd be able to get to all of them. And they know that. They're very smart to understand that, right? So what I've always just continuously done is as I'm as I'm replacing a piece that I was doing, the whole goal was to be able to go build something else and to continue circulating around and building that. So, how we did it at Clinic Grower was we hired a media buyer to be able to purchase the ads because we were heavy on ads at that point in time. We purchased an account manager to be able to do like the client conversations. And we kind of just did that for about a year and a half. That was COVID. There was 4 or 5 of us, and we were able to scale because that account manager, plus with me supporting a little bit, we were able to take on, I think we got up to about 28, 30 clients. And then we started anticipating, okay, well, we got to hire our next account manager, right? And then that flowed into, okay, well, we've got this many clients. So we really started focusing on what we call redundancy. So whether we're using white label or whether we're using our internal people, did we have sufficient resources that if one of those people left, right? You guys will hear me talking about this at the event. Like, don't create person dependent processes. It's going to absolutely wreck your business. Meaning that one person and one person only knows how to do something, and that's not you. That to me, just long term, is a risk that you probably don't want to be taking because that person leaves. Even if you found like the best person tomorrow, they're going to need to give 2 to 4 weeks notice. Then there's a training and ramp up period. What are you doing in the 4 to 6 weeks in that interim? Most people don't have a plan for that. And that was something that I really obsessed over was like you said, recording myself as I'm doing teachings so that next person, whether it's a replacement or it's a second set of hands coming in, didn't have to repeat myself multiple times teaching the same things. That content was already there for me.
With this trainings that you guys have, is this you guys have this all in like just the mechanics of it? Is it in like a Google Drive or like how do you deliver this to your team in a way that they know exactly where to go to find this information?
Yeah. So high level's got a membership area. Some people have used Kajabi. We use Thinkific. But basically there's a video component, there's a written component, and then there's SOPs around it, right? So if I'm teaching someone how to get access to a Facebook page, it's a recorded training, right? Walking through, there's an SOP, walking through. And then we usually ask them, as part of the quiz or kind of post is to record themselves doing it so that we can kind of check against how were they taught to do it versus how did they do it. So there's an evaluation. It's not much different than when I was a nurse, or I think if any of us have worked at McDonald's or something like that. It's like, here's how you do it. Can you show me how you did it? And here's the revision or the adjustment that you need to make. I'm just a big person of like everyone learns differently. In the agency world, digital, it's a little more difficult to do tactile because obviously like we're just working on computers. But I try to have as much visual and auditory as I can combine for anyone that's on the team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like a really good. I love this idea of having them record it and play it back to you, especially speaking their own words while they're doing it can really maybe highlight some false beliefs about why they're doing something, right? So, yeah, that's fantastic advice there. Got some weird light flashing over here. Sorry.
The other reason we did it too was when I was a nurse, when you had a nursing student, the first person that they learned how to do an IV on was you. So you better teach them properly, otherwise you're gonna have a sore hand tomorrow, right? So
yeah.
so you would show them, teach them, and you'd be like, okay, show me how you do it, right? There's a lot of things from medicine that I brought into my agency world just because that's been around for over 100 years. It's proven and it's demonstrated in terms of being effective. I don't need to reinvent the wheel sometimes.
Right. So what are some of those things that you bring from the medical world that have been really useful in your agency that maybe not obvious to people that don't come from that background?
Yeah, so probably my team, if they watch this, will probably laugh a little bit. In medicine, we have what we call the standard of care, right? So depending on the procedure that you're doing or the approach that you're doing or the area of medicine, there's a peer standard that we all adhere to, right? So that means that if someone's going to be the maverick, you got to make sure that you got ethics approval, you've proven it out, you've really thought about it, you talk to your peers, you don't just go and experiment, right? And that is kind of my approach when it comes to building an agency. When we built the second agency growth team, we didn't just launch with a promise to 100 people, like you kind of see everyone doing. It was kind of like, hey, let's find 5 people, right? Because one of them's going to fail, 2 are going to be successful, hopefully 1 or 2 more along with it. But let's build it out. Let's study the industry, right? Let's look at what everyone else has done. Let's break down the pros and cons. Let's do a proper business plan, right? And come up with something that's truly unique or sustainable, right? Because I think either of those are important. That comes directly from my approach of, if I wanted to learn a new technique, I would go to literature. I would ask my peers. I would go and find an expert. I would learn it. Then I would try it. I never just came in one day and said, "Hey, Patrick, I got this new needle. I want to stick it in your neck. Can you let me give it a try?" You know, I again, it's a hard perspective to give to people, but when I'm such a rule-based person, that is a strength that comes from, like people die if you make mistakes. So like it's pretty dire. Like, in business, it's just your business. Most of the time we're not making those types of decisions. But, I think for a lot of us, we probably are aware that we're 2 or 3 bad decisions away from the thing going under. I think for those visionaries, right, those mavericks, you probably want to just take a deep breath sometimes and just make sure that you've got it planned out.
Right, right. I think that's one of the ways that I look at the integrator in our agency is kind of like a little bit of a speed bump, where it's like, I want to go fast all the time. And they're like, whoa, let's think this through. Like, what are you willing to give up by doing this, right? I think that's a really valuable perspective. I want to change gears just a little bit and talk about the acquisition of talent in the way that you guys do it. You have a whole coaching program that specializes on helping people with this part of their businesses, specifically for agencies. And I'd love to understand that, like, I've got a couple questions here. Like, where are you finding the talent? And are you doing more of like a recruitment or job posting model?
Yeah. So it starts with a philosophy, which is average is not going to ever scale you. Average doesn't scale. I don't have any evidence of that anywhere in our industry. That average, like middle of the road is going to do it, right? Everyone that I know that's had success has been exceptional at multiple times in multiple ways. So if we're going to do that, that means that we can't tolerate the average, which means if just we're talking about these 100 people, the 50 and below, we can't even, it's not even an option. It doesn't matter how many fires we have. They're completely incompetent and not worth it. And then it comes down to, okay, well, if you have that top 50%, where's the value, Patrick? It's not at 51, 52, and 53. It's at 97, 98, 99. That's the true value. Okay. Those are the enigmas. Call them the unicorns, right? It's like they're not an agency owner, but they could be. But maybe the $50,000 in payroll a month scares the shit out of them. So they're just not taking that risk. Okay. Those are the gems. Those are the people that I want. And everything that we do around how we recruit is focused on finding that we call it top 5%, but it's really like the 1%. So how we do the job? Yeah, we do traditional job postings, right? We use Indeed, LinkedIn. We probably have 17 or 18 different job platforms that we utilize. But it comes down to the job title, the job description. If anyone knows Dan Kennedy, it's a sales letter. It's essentially what it is, right? It's old school. Pull out those books from the library. It's a sales letter. I'm telling you a story about how I'm going to treat you, how I'm going to train you, the opportunities that you're going to have, why you would want to come to me, because I got to sell you. Like, everyone thinks to themselves, and maybe it's a little bit of a contrarian approach. It's like that person is interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. They have choice. They can go drive Uber. It's sad, but it's like, that's the reality, right? That top tier of talent will have options.
Right. Yeah.
So you better be prepared. You don't have to pay the top of the market, but you better be prepared to support them in ways that would work, right? So like things that we all hear that we don't pay attention to. When do you guys do payment? Right? We kind of take it as offense, but it's like most people have been screwed over not paid consistently or not paid at all over periods of time, they're asking like, how stable is your cash flow? Right? So we're very straightforward. It was that we pay payroll on this date and this date, and you know that it's always going to happen. And here's the platform that we use and how we do it. What kind of opportunities are there? Okay, you start here at Grunt, then you move to Maggot, then you go to like Turd, and like basically like we show them exactly what the progression is, all the way up to you want to take my job, come for it. I will happily do podcasts with Patrick all day. Like, come and take my job, please. I'm just waiting for someone to say, I will do it for you. It's also, and again, just so everyone's clear here watching the recording, I've spent a small fortune on mindset coaching, right? So I have an incredible mindset coach. Okay. And it's one of the things I would recommend to anybody is go find a really good coach. He always said to me, Patrick, you either underestimate their abilities you overestimate their ability or you fail to support them. Meaning that when we interview somebody, we think they're better than they really are, or they're phenomenal and we suck at supporting them. That's why people leave. So we focus on making sure we're never going to overestimate, right? We're really we use Colby, Predictive Index. We have a very, very extensive hiring process. But then we support the hell out of them, because if we're going to find that time for the talent, it's kind of be like, I don't know, what's your favorite sport? Soccer. I'm going to go over to the middle of nowhere in Ecuador, right? I'm gonna go away from my family for 6 months to this village that just produces like Pele lookalikes, okay? And I'm not going to sign them. I'm not going to continue to develop those 8, 12, 14-year-olds. I'm not going to bring them over to Manchester United and say, hey, you should sign these kids. I'm just going to walk away and be like, it's not worth it. It's there's something better to do. Like, when you have that talent, that generational talent, there's not a sports team on the world that wouldn't probably almost kill somebody for it, because that's where the stakes are. That's what you're dealing with in your business, right? So I always love the idea of a minor league system. Not everyone's going to make it, right? But if I fill it with talented prospects, I can trade it. I can sign it off to somebody else. I can develop myself. And if one of my top people leave, it's like next out, right? There's the rookie, right? They even have more talent than the person did before, and they're cost effective. I can control them for a period of time. That's very cost effective. I think the examples are everywhere in the world. We're just not probably doing, using the same application. And that's how I think of it. I think of AGT as we're a firm that's in charge of finding fantastic talent. So the question you asked before, getting a long way back, where do you find these people? I don't care where they are. I just want the best. So if they're in South Korea, fantastic. Can you work my hours? If you're in Canada, fantastic. Can you fit my budget? You're somewhere in Latin America, fantastic, right? Do you have a great accent? Are you bilingual, right? Do you have the resources that you need to do the job? I'll hire someone down the street to come physically into the office, but my geographic pool may actually be quite poor. Maybe my geographic pool is more of the bottom 50% than the top 50%. In Tampa, we're pretty lucky, right? But I mean, you could be somewhere in North Dakota, right? And your prospects are going to be just different in person than they would be remote.
Absolutely. So your ability, you mentioned LinkedIn and Indeed, and we use these in our agency as well. And then we've tried things like Upwork and online jobs. And I'm curious I want to have a mix of some theoretical stuff as well as tactical. So from a tactical, being able to take action on it, how do you hit some of these other countries to make sure that this job gets in front of as many people so you can identify those rock stars to put in your minor league?
One of the things I think that's most underappreciated is the job title. We're marketers, man. You can't come up with something better than what you did, right? So one of the things that we learned early on, because we did a lot of beta testing, right? Say I need to sign a business development representative. Okay, cool. So I put out business development representative in brackets BDR. Well, Patrick, who takes that job? What's their end seat that they want to shoot for? Someone that starts in a junior sales position, who do they want to become?
Yeah, they don't have like huge aspirations, right? They're gonna just be going for this role only.
Well, for the bottom 50%, but what about that top 2% that's applying to that type of position, right? Do they want to be a sales manager someday?
Potentially.
Potentially. So we found out that we called a junior sales associate.
So you're essentially like, this makes sense now. This is the minor league pathway because you're setting them up like, hey, you're coming on as a trainee, and then this is your pathway. You're kind of building that into the job title is like the the pathway forward, right? It's built directly in. That's smart. There's a psychological hack there.
It's like in baseball, right? I could go to the Dominican Republic and I could talk about the major league transfer window. And I could say, hey, free tryouts. I got $1.5 million available to sign 3 players. I'm not going to just get like 4 people that show up. I'm going to get 1,400. Well, I need the 1,400 because I know that 600 alone aren't going to make it, right? And I'm really just looking for like rare juniors and like the Tatistes, and like I just want like the 3 best.
Right.
So the 3 best out of 10, probably not great odds. The three best out of 1,200, I'm in a much better situation, right? So it's just understanding, just like when we cast a large net on a VSL and an ad or something like that, right? Like we're looking for needles in the haystack. We always get people that opt into these things and they're junk, right? But if you only spend $50 on ads, you're not going to get great results. You might have to spend 1,500 or 5,000 in order to get that prospect. It's the exact same approach. Just I think people do a job posting, they copy and paste somebody else's, they walk away from it and they're like, no, man, like that's probably one of the most important investments based on time and attention that you need to be giving into your business. You're going to be handing over your shit to somebody else. There's no shortcuts here.
Right. How do you comb through that? Let's say you've got the 1,200 applicants. That's a lot to kind of like parse through, and this like, how do you whittle that down?
This is where the visionaries come in, and they're great, right? So, Patrick, your account managers, what do they do each day? What are some of the most important things that they do?
Contacting our clients to see how happy they are, if there's any opportunities or issues.
Do they use email?
They do use email as a part of that.
If they didn't check email for 3 or 4 days, how worried would you be?
I'd be pretty worried.
So guess what we have in our process, right? The evaluations that we send to our account manager prospects, we email it to them. Because if they're not checking email, do I have any interest in giving them an opportunity?
Right. Right. So
they're not checking their personal email, right? So again, just so everyone's clear, it's June 25th at noon. I have 26 unread emails. If you know my personality profile, I'm a great profile for an account manager, right? I have some clients, they have like 77,000 unread emails. I wouldn't give them project management or account management duty for an hour.
Yeah. Right.
Same thing like if we're talking about media buyers, right? Like attention to detail. Again, a systems engineer, right, needs to be able to build things, right? So I have them talk to me about like, why is Python fantastic? I don't know really anything about Python. I know the basics about it, right? Like someone who's really, really passionate, they'll go on about like how they can connect all these systems and the universal language. I'm like, cool. I'm interested in that person.
Yeah. You can, I've noticed, prior to being a software engineer, I played poker for a decade for a living. And there's things that you just pick up on. When you ask somebody something that they're passionate about, they may be sitting back like this. And then it's kind of like one of these, like, why is Python fantastic? Like everything changes, their face lights up. And I look for that in those interviews. I'm like, this person, like, I just hit on something they care about. I'm a believer you're never going to be fantastic at something you're not passionate about. There may be things that you're naturally gifted towards, but if you're going to be in that kind of like top 2 or 3%, like that ability to get into that spot comes from like the excitement about that role. That's like, I really enjoy what I'm doing here and learning, and I want to be better and better at it, rather than like, I want to make sure that I'm a good employee. It's that passion that is going to drive that excellence. So You mentioned that you had a very extensive hiring process, and I wonder if we can just maybe in broad strokes hit on some of those things that are a part of that process. You've mentioned you've got the built-in test for account managers to check their responsiveness because that's going to be a really important thing. You mentioned some more of this kind of process that helps you identify okay, this person I think is a 3%er or the 97. How did they get chopped off along the way?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, without kind of like giving away all the secrets, it's actually very simple. I've taught on this many times. It's going to be a great job title and a great job description. Okay. I'm going to inspire that person and I'm going to have a call to action, just like you would have in a sales letter, right? I need them to take some type of action to show me to what degree did I inspire them, right? So you could ask them to do a video. You could ask them to call in. You could have them do a small project. You could have them send in something like a cover letter, right? We've used a Loom video very often in terms of getting that person to say, like, how did this speak to you? Why is this a great opportunity, right? Because that's what a cover letter is. Remember, a cover letter is, here I am, give me this opportunity. I put in the time along with a resume to send you something. So we just reinvented that into a 21st century approach, right? Don't send me a cover letter because I'm not going to read it. But do the exact same thing you were doing there and tell me your story. I want passionate people that are passionate about growing the business. Okay. We usually have what we call speed bumps and hurdles, right? So there'll be like that test, right? So for account manager, it's wonderful. We won't even tell them. We'll just send them the next step and we'll just wait to see whether or not they check their email. Right? As long as deliverability is good, which it is most of the time on how we do it, then it comes down to, okay, well, they didn't check their email. Like, I can't help you on that, right? Like, so there's no give outs here, no help, right? When we do the interview, I really take the approach that I'm not there for me, I'm there for them. So I'm going to ask them situational questions that come up every single day in my business that I'm looking for solutions for, right? So you've got clients that don't do this or clients that don't do that. I'm not going to tell them my playbook or my SOP, but I'm going to be like, how would you deal with that situation? Because I'm very interested in the ideas that person's going to bring. Again, I need a little bit of visionary. Don't need a lot of it, but I do need people that are they're able to tackle challenges. Okay. We ask them, about their career goals. I don't ask them about 5 years from now because no kid can tell you what they're going to do in 5 years, right? We put them through behavioral assessments. And that's just the first interview process, right? If they're a really good kid, we might interview 20, 25 people. So that's the other thing too, is you got to get to a certain amount of scale to be able to make good decisions. Sometimes all 25 suck and we don't move forward with any of them. Sometimes I'm fortunate and 24 of the 25 are all fantastic. And then they move into a second interview process where for our clients, for agencies, that's when you guys get introduced to them, right? Is you've had all the prep work, you've seen all the tests that we put them through. They're obviously exceptional. Are they a good fit for what you've got, right? Just because I evaluated them as exceptional doesn't mean that, just like the draft, right? Like people are going to pick different people at different times based on what their needs are. My job for my agency is to make sure that I have the talent that's there so that your impossible decision is like, Brad, both of these people are fantastic. What do I do? And I'm like, well, that's why you came to us, right? You came to us for the impossible decision of which of these gems do you pick?
I love this. That's the problem that we all want to have, right? And I think a lot of us haven't ever been in that situation where we're like, I've got two fantastic people to pick from. It's more of the other side of the equation where it's like, I need somebody in this role, and this seems like the best choice from but you're not really excited about it. And maybe I can get them, mold them into this right person, and I can make these justifications of why this will work rather than just be like, I'm blown away by this person, right? And as you said, average is not going to help us grow our agency. It never does, right? So the best companies are made up from these rock stars, right? It's just countless examples of this. This has been amazing, this whole coverage around this stuff. And, I know that you've got this conversation could go on for weeks on the proper way to bring people into your agency. This is a massive skill set. I want to change gears just for a minute. And you mentioned earlier that you had hired a mental space coach, right? To help mindset coach, a mindset coach. Um, Obviously this had an impact on you, but I'm wondering take this into account with other things. What do you think has been some of the things that have been most instrumental in the success of your agency from like outside sources, from things you've learned, courses or books, something somebody else could do to help them go faster?
Acquire shortcuts. That's honestly not, we're not saying crappy shortcuts. We're talking about like go out and acquire, right? Have a budget that you're spending in continuing education, right? That allows you to not make the mistakes that other people have made so you can get farther along faster than other people. That's why you see all of the gurus, right? Whether they acknowledge it or not, they are in Russell Brunson's mastermind, right? Or then they went over to this, right? It's like I can pretty much pull apart any and all of them, and I could probably guess on a hand that they've been to a Dan Kennedy event, right? Right? Or they've been to a Breslinson, or they've spent time with Tony Robbins, right? Or other people. They all did it to quickly acquire skills or knowledge that they would have normally have done for a long period of time. As entrepreneurs, I will say that is the one amazing thing about owning a business is you have access to that cash flow directly to basically deploy at your will. You can use it on the McLarens and all that other dumb stuff. I'd be investing it in acquiring more knowledge. And I think that the masterminds that we've been in, some have been great, some have been average, some have been phenomenal. You'll know when you get there. And you're going to spend money that's not going to give you the same ROI, but you'll get closer and closer as you do that. And that's the other thing for medicine too, is our whole career is continuing education. You never stop learning. So that's been something that's been helpful for me because then, as you know, I'm always pretty much at some mastermind every couple of months trying to look for those shortcuts.
Yeah, I've taken a similar path. You know, I'm in, I don't know, 3 masterminds right now, just like always trying to learn more and find those shortcuts, as you mentioned. And, you know, a great part of it, like this is where we met. We met in a mastermind, right? Is like if you go and you join a mastermind, so much has to be true with the other people that are in there. And for you to be in there, like it's much easier to build a relationship with it when so much is already true. When you join, like, hey, they've got a growth mindset. There's only a small percentage of people that are entrepreneurs. Of those people that are entrepreneurs, only a small percentage of those people are the ones that are actively going and seeking continuing education and building things. If you think about like somebody who owns a corner gas station, like they may work there, they're an entrepreneur, right? But they're probably not going and joining gas station masterminds or business masterminds on like how to level up. And when you go and you find this, one of my business partners in another business has this saying that I found to be really true is like, he always felt like he was a zebra in a room full of horses. And when you go to these masterminds, it's like you get to be a zebra in a room full of zebras. And I thought it was amazing because it can be a lonely journey. Some of our struggles, you know, most people are not entrepreneurs. And if you don't have these people in your circle, who do you communicate with some of the daily challenges that you're having? And to just kind of put yourself around these people while simultaneously learning from somebody that has kind of like been through the trenches in this, it's just like, wow, all this frustration, I can skip all that, right? Like maybe this is true for you, Brad, but I know this is certainly true for me. There are things that I did before I found the shortcut that like, okay, here, I tried these 8 different things and like the 9th one works. And to be able to go and find somebody that's like, hey, I tried these 8 things with this other thing. Don't do that. Instead, just jump right to number 9. Like it's so much more rewarding to spend this money and feel like you're growing fast. And like it's very expensive to not have the shortcuts from a stress and a cost and the growth perspective. And, you know, just like a life enjoyment piece where you're like, it sucks struggling with no end in sight. And to have somebody else that can guide you is, I mean, it's fantastic. Brad, is there one that if you had to really say like, hey, this one really meant the most to me and I know it's different for everyone, but I'd love to hear what that was for you.
I won what?
That one mastermind or group or thing that you were a part of where you look back and be like, that was fantastic. I would highly recommend this one.
think it'd be unfair given all the one. That's a good political question for all the ones that I'm still well connected to. I think what I would share instead, if I could be the politician, unfortunately,
Yeah, do it.
is whether you agree with the knowledge or not, respect. Respect the transfer of that knowledge, right? So like I know a lot of the time, Patrick, we hear this like, oh, I don't want to niche down, I can do it. That's cool. That's cool. Like if you want to do it a different way, that's all on you, right? Like, but respect where that teaching is coming from and how powerful it can be. I've seen a lot of people attend these events and not appreciate or respect the knowledge that's there because they think they can do it a better way. You might be able to, but also respect the fact that like those people are sharing that with you not because they're big and showy people, but because like they had a lot more success than you've had up to this point, right? So that's probably I would say. I think any of the masterminds that are niche down focus, I think are most entrepreneurs' best interests because I really believe, and it was one of the things that I was taught in my graduate degree, is like you do what you do best. You can't do everything.
Right.
Generalists, it's fun and it's exciting to do because we're dynamic people with great skill sets. But it does mean that you just end up doing a whole bunch of custom things and you're probably not charging enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason that like McDonald's is the biggest restaurant in the world. It's not because they have necessarily the best food, but they have a scalable process that they can repeat, right? They're not like selling like cheeseburgers in Phoenix and then like sushi in Philadelphia and, ribs in Florida. Like they have a process that they just repeat and they're niched down. They're niched down in that. And I'm a big believer in that. It's much better to be like an inch wide and a mile deep than a mile wide and an inch deep. People are going to respond to you. I've gone through this extensively on like the benefits of niching down. And I know that is, I think a lot of the struggle with people, especially agencies, is like they didn't start off like niching down. The message I have for you, and I bet you would agree, is like you don't have to abandon your past clients. You can still support them. But if you can choose something like Brad has done, where he has a lot of experience in this kind of like medical niche, and he's able to leverage that with conversations, and he's niched down into something that he has a ton of knowledge on, like can still have your legacy clients, but going forward, you've positioned yourself really well to attract the type of clients that you want to work with. And I think, that was a mistake that I made in the beginning. And I'll tell you, when we niched down, like we 10x'd our business over about 11 months, right? Where it was just like, okay, this is what we're going to be really good at, right? This is it. Let's block everything else out and put intense focus on it. So yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. So Brad, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And this was amazing. Like so much awesome information. I always enjoy our conversations. And, it's so hard when I have somebody like you where it's like, I want to go down this pathway and then I want to go down this pathway because there's so much knowledge on this. And, now I have a better understanding. Like you've got this massive perspective of past careers and, divergent skill sets between visionary. It kind of makes sense for me now where I would just want to I just want to question you for hours and hours, but unfortunately
I do have to go.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having you at the event, man. Thank you so much. Is there any final things that you want to leave people with, these agency owners, on any advice or things you would have done differently?
No, I mean honestly, I'm an open book. I have agencies approach me for 15, 20-minute one-on-ones, and then I'm happy to do it. I kind of control it a little bit, right? I don't do like 40 of them a month or anything like that. But whether it's a podcast or a spotlight with Chase Buckner on High Level or something like that, I'm always interested in giving back. So feel free to reach out if the answer is not somewhere else that's obvious.
What's the best way for someone to reach out to you, Brad?
It's honestly just clinicgrower.com. That's probably our biggest. I'm very active on Facebook in most of the groups, so feel free to send me a message directly or on LinkedIn.
So if you guys want to reach out to Brad, I highly recommend it. As you see, Brad has a huge heart. He loves helping people. He's built all of his businesses really around impact, right? And like you can feel it in the way that he carries himself. So Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you and your time and all your amazing knowledge.
Thank you.